All right, man. Let's jump into it. Let's jump into it. And I know I've been missing off the scene for a while, but it's all good. I'm back. Been out with family. Been dealing with some sickness, but I had a great time. Like I said, being out with family, I had the opportunity to take my family camping and horseback riding. Some of them have never experienced that because they're so young, and unlike myself, they didn't grow up on the farm. So, given the opportunity to have experiences like I had was a good thing. It was really a good time seeing their faces, their excitement, their enjoyment. But now I'm back on the scene. Hope to produce some more content. Hope I don't get bogged down with other things. But here we go. Excuse me. Now, when I was growing up, first off, let me back up. My grandparents, Thomas Jefferson, Marjorie Jefferson, they were part of a civil rights movement here in my home county. It was the time when black folk were fighting to be able to vote fairly, voting rights. That's what was going on in 1959 in Fayette County, Tennessee. So they intervened in some things and got some boycotts going and got a movement going. And when after that, when I came along, my grandmama told me, she said, boy, she said, now in your life, you know what the obstacles are. It's up to you to figure out how to get around them. And every day I sit and ponder on what she said. Every day when I face obstacles, I always remember that conversation off in the car. We were driving into town and she felt the need to tell me that. But when I look at folks today, we're in this culture, and I'm freestyling tonight, so y'all gonna have to research the scriptures on your own. But when we look at today's society, everybody just want to complain. Everybody just want to sit and complain about how hard it is. And I guess for me, it really gets under my skin. And I'm going to tell you why. This is me raw and uncut. It really gets under my skin because if you're part of this thing in which we serve Jesus Christ, now I call it Christianity. I don't know what some of y'all call it. Y'all can call it the way, Christianity. It's fine with me. I call it Christianity. Jesus had already told us that we're going to suffer because of him. Now, I guess some of y'all think that the book is playing, lying. I don't know what you think it is. But just because you are saved doesn't mean that you're not going to face any trials and tribulations. As a matter of fact, when we look at James, when we look at Peter, look at John, we look at Paul, we see different things that was going on in the church as far as persecution. And we can look at secular history and see the tyrants who were over Rome. Even before Rome, we can go back to the Seleucid dynasty. I guess I'm saying that right. With Antiochus Epiphanes. I mean, we can go back and see the tyrants in which persecuted God's people. But for some reason, folks think that this is going to be a cakewalk. God didn't guarantee that. He didn't guarantee that it's going to be a cakewalk. Again, it's quite the contrary. Because he paid a penalty. Jesus Christ paid a penalty for our sin. Propitiation for sin. Penal substitution atonement. Substitutionary atonement. I'm stuttering tonight, so it's late. Time for bed. But this is stuff that's on my mind. Because like I said, I don't like complainers. It's never been in me to complain. Especially for me. I ain't trying to be misogynistic. But especially for me as a man. I ain't never complained with the cards I was dealt. I just figured out how to play the game. Take the hand, make some calculated decisions, and get some wins. And those calculated decisions came from a lot of prayer. It came from a lot of obedience. Now, let me back up for a minute. I think 2 weeks ago, I think it's going on 2 weeks, I was on Berean TV. We talking about the state of things, in the inner cities and whatnot. And I was reading down the comments afterwards, and this brother said that we didn't address the sin issue. And I'm like, well, I thought that we did, if not explicitly, but certainly implicitly, we dug into that. But let me entertain it for a minute. When we look at the condition of some of our communities, when we look at the entire existence of humankind, it comes down to a sin problem. I don't care who you are. It's a sin problem. Because if it wasn't for a sin problem, we wouldn't even need Jesus Christ. That's just what it is. So everybody is dealing with a sin problem. Now, the problem is that folks don't want to submit to Christ. Now, they want to talk about Christ. They want to talk about what the Bible says. And we got these folks who want to talk about what the Bible say about justice. But how you going to speak on God's justice when you can't check you? Because you're going to be in the crosshairs of God's justice. So with that, if you're not submitting yourself to the Holy Spirit, loving God, loving people, guess what? Even if you're not a believer, Hebrews 12 tells us that you're going to face a discipline. If you are a believer, that's what's going to happen. And we can go to Romans 1 and see what happens to the unbeliever. Romans 1st chapter. So it is a sin condition. But we go look at some of the epistles. Guess what? Sometimes it just ain't your fault. We can go to Peter, 1 Peter. Now we start looking at them 2nd and 3rd chapters. And sometimes it is what it is. That's just how it falls. You ain't got to do nothing. But what James tells us, that God doesn't tempt us, it comes down to how we handle the trials and tribulation. Are we going to handle it in a way that suits us? Or are we going to handle it in a way that honors God? That's the difference between being righteous and being sinful. When you make a decision that you're going to be handle the situation righteous and not the way you feel. See, too many times, and I've been guilty of this when I was young and dumb, too many times we got people making decisions based off how they feel. I'm too old for that now. I'm 4 years from 50. So at some point, we got to grow up. We got to mature. And when we look at the word perfect in the Bible, it means to mature. In most cases in the Greek. So at some point, people, we have to mature in our faith. That's just what it is. We can't be sitting around here, like these cats, man, running around here with rags, in their pocket, running around here with guns. That looks stupid, somebody 40, 50 years old doing that. But guess what? You got some cats doing it. Look real stupid. So if you are dedicated and love God like you say you do, then at some point, we have to see the transformation. I know for me, I had a transformation. I'm going to tell you right now, I was very intelligent, but also very ignorant at the same time. And that's the most dangerous type of fool. And that's what I was. But when I really start looking in the Bible and reading it and really digesting it and understanding what it's saying, I couldn't help but to start a transformation and really look at what the Bible is saying. The Bible is about a person becoming transformed to look like the image of Jesus Christ. That's just what it is, plain and simple. Because if you follow the two commandments that Jesus laid out, love God, love people, guess what? Things would be so easy. But I know for some folk, some folk want to go back and grab that 636, I think it's the Mishvat, and they can work it. They can work it. But when it comes to those two things, and see, that's the thing about the Pharaohs. See, the Pharisees could work it. They could work them laws. But when it came down to the two things that Jesus said, they failed. They failed miserably. And we see that today in the 21st century. Folks failing miserably to love God and love people. And if you can't do those things, it's going to be a tough road ahead of you. Because first and foremost, if we prioritize, like we supposed to prioritize, and I tell my daughter this all the time, I say, if you prioritize Jesus above anything else, I'm not saying that you're not going to have issues in life, but you be able to get through it a lot easier because you done put the master ahead of everything, and he's going to help you get through those minefields. And secondly, let's go down to the people part. How can you not love people when all of us are the imago Dei? We're the image of God. Regardless if we follow Christ or not, everybody is still the image of God. So you gotta love them. That's why Jesus said, love your enemies. You gotta love all people, not people who look like you, think like you, act like you. You gotta love all people. But again, those two things, too deep for some folk. Too deep. They want to make the Bible do all kind of things except transform the heart and soul of people. That's what it's to do. But y'all want to make it all kind of other things. You're doing too much. Slow down. Pump your brakes. Get some understanding. Get under a good leadership who's teaching them the Bible. So you can really understand instead of going on Google, internet, just typing in stuff. Ooh, look what I found. Ooh, look what I found. And have no context and no bearing to what it is that you're getting information on. So find somebody. Then you come in, your theology's all mixed up, crazy. Folk looking at you like, come on, man. Come on. Come on. You know, even before I went to seminary, I knew how to study because my grandmama showed me. She showed me how to get off in that book. You know, she didn't have no seminary education, but she showed me how to dive off in that book and be able to explain things for myself. I remember one night I was reading out loud, and I couldn't say them names in the Old Testament. And she looked over there and she said, boy, you better learn how to pronounce them names right. And I did better. I don't know if I got them right, but I made sure to do better. And I made sure to go on Google and see how these things pronounce in that and also in Logos, because she was serious about it. She was serious about me learning the things like they supposed to be learned, having what we call orthodox. And I loved her for that. She introduced me to Christ, her and her mother, my great-grandmama, Annie Henry. So I love that about them ladies. Like I said, they didn't have no seminary education, but they knew how to study that Bible, and they loved the Lord, and they loved people. And because they put that in me, I've been able to make some moves. I ain't saying that my life been smooth sailing. I done had some issues. But because I held strong to my faith, because it was cultivated properly, I was able to make moves and endure even some of the toughest situations that most cats would have folded in. And that just being real. But no, everybody want to complain. They want to complain. They want somebody to feel sorry for them. And I'm sorry, I'm a Jefferson. I ain't finna lay down for nobody. That's just what it is, because my faith too strong for that. I ain't doing it. Faith is associated with the Jefferson name. You hear me? On this side, in Summerville, Tennessee, where I'm originally from, faith is associated with the Jefferson name. Real talk. That's how we move, and that's how we gonna move. Ain't nobody gonna turn us away from that. But let me get on something else real quick. And this is just me, you know, in my natural element, this dropping stuff tonight. Like I said, I ain't had nothing prepared. This felt like getting on the mic and chopping it up with everybody. Now, we got these certain preachers. It's a certain preachers now. And I'm going to go ahead and say what it is. I'm going to ask the question. How y'all going to grab the critical theory, a.k.a. critical race theory, and bring it in the church? How y'all going to do that? How y'all going to take the Frankfurt School, Marxism, and bring it into the church? I'm not understanding. Y'all got teachings from Max, what's his name? Horkheimer. First generation Marxists in that school. And y'all gonna decide to bring it into the church. And then here's the thing. That the first generation, the second generation, what's his name? Jürgen Habermas. This is how they gonna do it. Then folk gonna take those things and they gonna add critical race theory, trying to make it palatable. I'm like, man, I said, this ain't nothing but a Trojan horse. But we got preachers bringing this mess into the church. Because let me tell you something. If y'all don't know anything about what the Frankfurt School taught, y'all need to go read. Because when we look at the second generation Marxists, like Jürgen Habermas, he got this thing called the public sphere. Intersubjective, communicative type stuff. And this cat didn't think that religion could contribute to the public sphere because it couldn't be communicated, because metaphysics couldn't be communicated. Now, granted, when he met with what's his name, the Pope, real name was Ratzinger, the Pope before the Pope, they got now the Roman Catholic. And he wrote a book. I can't think of the name of it right now. He kind of changed his stance on it. But even so, I don't think he meant it, because when you look at the critical theory has an emancipation component, which means that the human condition has to be totally free from any type of authority. So what that mean, folks? If we are Christians and our authority is Christ, guess what they saying? We got to free ourselves from Christ. But you got preachers bringing that into the church. I'm like, look at y'all. See, let me tell you something. I'm going to tell you something about me. Y'all listen up. When I see something, I never run with the crowd. My folks told me you don't never run with the crowd because you don't know where they're running to. You run by yourself so you can see clearly where you're going. And that's how I roll. I roll by myself. But when you see the crowd running, you need to check for a minute. Like, hold up, let me see something. So when this whole thing with CRT, critical theory, started popping off, I said, man, let me go back and get into my psychology books, man, and some anthropology and do a little sociology study. And I'm looking at things like, oh my Lord, that's what I thought it was. And like I said, folks just follow the bandwagon and don't use any common sense to find out what something is. Because you are so opposed to certain brothers, you will grab something that's outside the realm of the Bible, actually, that opposes the Bible, and you will grab it and bring it into the church. Brother, you need to check yourself. Preachers who doing that, you need to check yourself. I'm being 100%. You need to check yourself. Because, again, the critical theory also included in critical race theory. You have to emancipate, the human condition has to emancipate itself from all type of authority. And again, our authority is Jesus Christ. So what they saying is quite simple. Get rid of Christ. So man, like I said, you need to check yourself before you start jumping on the bandwagon and then scandalizing the name of Christ. Real talk. So check yourself again. That's all I got to say. But anyway, look here. I hope y'all like the content I've been putting up. I hate to cut it off abruptly, but it's time for me to go to bed. I say to drop this out for you. But if you like my content, Feel free to like, share, subscribe to the channel, and I promise you, I'm going to make time to get back on it. But in the meanwhile, y'all preachers, get that philosophical mess out the church.